All right, we are live. Welcome to the Deconstructing Data Podcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, CMO at BDEX, along with our co-host Joshua Morgan, BDEX Marketing Extraordinaire, and of course, David Finkelstein, BDEX's co-founder and CEO. Today's guest is Camela Thompson. Camela is Vice President of Marketing at CaliberMind, a leading B2B marketing data platform that helps customers reach campaign performance goals faster. Camela spent 15 plus years in revenue operations in the tech industry in a range of roles as a marketer, a content creator for some of the leading tech and B2B brands. And she's deeply familiar with the pain points that ops teams face, as is passionate about helping ops professionals accelerate their career. In addition to all of this experience, she also hosts CaliberMind's podcast, The Revenue Marketing Report, where she produces expert-fueled content devoted to helping B2B marketers hone their craft. Wow, that's amazing. I'm a B2B marketer, so that's definitely speaking my language. So thanks for being here, Camela.
Thanks so much.
Could you please start from the beginning and tell us your story and what inspired you to get into marketing?
Sure. So it was a bit of a roundabout path. I was in college. I really enjoyed both the arts and math. I love math. So when I came out of college, wasn't really sure what to do. Ended up falling into operations. I spent 15 years in operations, spanning marketing, sales, and customer success support in the B2B space. And honestly, kind of burned out a bit and decided I wanted to do something drastically different. I had published some books and decided, let's give writing a try. So that's how I made my foray into marketing, and here I am.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. Great to meet you. Let me ask you a question from your perspective. What would you say are the biggest challenges that brands are facing today with respect to first-party data?
Collecting it. So as we all know, and I think B2B marketers, I tend to see that B2C is about 5 years ahead of B2B and realizing some of the issues we're up against. So we're seeing a lot of changes in privacy first design, particularly around browsers, as you guys know, I'm sure, but it's something we have to proselytize on a very consistent basis. We're finding that in addition to the data challenges that come with privacy first, and then the laws like GDPR, CASL, things along those lines, we're seeing more resistance in handing over their personal information. And that's understandable. I think it's a sign of where the market is today. A lot of people are fatigued. They're tired of being online. There's a much higher threshold I'm seeing in that value transition when they feel something's valuable enough to give them your personal information. So I'm noticing that starting out with hitting them up for a demo or something along those lines, not working as well as the thought leadership value plays.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually, that I want to expand on, just because, we see that a lot. And we talk to a lot of brands and about that. And really, I think that there needs to be a very clear and transparent value exchange, right? In order for the consumer to give up any information today, right? They're very resistant to that. But if they feel like they're getting something for it, I think that, and there's a lot, it's transparent how that data is going to be used and what it's going to be used for and who has access to it and all that, then I think people are more understanding, and it's about brands building relationships. They have to build those relationships and build that trust, right? In order to get consumers to actually give up their data.
Totally agree.
Wow.
So out of curiosity, what would be like the top 5 things that make your life easier in the digital marketing arena, especially when it comes to data?
Oh, so where possible, data enrichment is so powerful. So we're using Clearbit right now. We have that integrated with our website and Slack, so we can see companies as they hit our page. We're using intent signals. So earlier signals that we have piped into Slack and Salesforce. So a lot of the integrations that we're seeing from a lot of the data vendors have been really useful in making our data more actionable faster. I'm also really fortunate to have the platform we do, because we track everything from anonymous web visits and down to sales activities and product signals. So when we're talking about expansions and renewals, we can see whether or not logins are behind, activity is behind. That is so valuable as a marketer, particularly a digital marketer, when you're building a strategy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Great point. Yeah. So I guess I'm curious, and this is kind of a question for David and Camela. But I want to sort of dig into, growing your data and like, what does it look like? So what do you think is the most important thing a brand can do as they scale their marketing data from a CSV list to a CRM to an identity graph?
From a B2B perspective, so many ideas are popping into my head, but David, if you want to run with that first.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that the important things are, what we already discussed is one, having full transparency with the consumer, so the consumer knows how you plan to use this data, and sticking to that, right? I mean, there's too many companies in the past that have gotten in trouble for misusing data. So brands really need to have some way of making that promise that they will keep the data secure, and that they will actually use it only in the way that they say that they're going to use it. So that's sort of first and foremost, as far as being, for me, what I think one of the most important things is, if you do that and you do that really well, then you can have the opportunity of actually collecting data, right? Because only then will consumer want to share with you. But as you're scaling, as Jesse was saying, as you're scaling to the point where you have a small list, to the point where you have a very large customer list, and you're using a CRM, and you need to understand who your consumers are across the entire sort of journey. Building an identity graph becomes important at that point, because now you need to be able to connect the dots between who is this person that I might know from the perspective of their name and address, but if you need to be able to at some point connect that to who they are online. What is their online identity? Whether that be an email address or mobile IDs, or in some cases the CTV world as well, so that you can be communicating across all channels to them. And that is just obviously especially important on the consumer side, but on the B2B side as well. And I'd love to hear your input as well on the B2B side.
So on the B2B side, I think one of the nuances that makes things extra difficult is one particular CRM that has the bulk of the market share decided to split people records into leads and contacts. And contacts are associated with counts, leads aren't. So having a system in place, the B2B buyer journey, if you have a larger product, let's say 50K plus, people are going to come in and out of the buyer journey, and you're going to have multiple people on the account that are engaging with you. So it's really important to understand how that data is structured in your system, so you can get a holistic view of the account. If you're keeping people isolated on lead records and they're hanging out there, I think in the data world, we call them orphans, and you're not automatically converting them into contacts so you can get that holistic view. It can be really hard to understand their level of engagement and whether or not the account is moving forward as a whole. So I think that's kind of a nuance that's we do really well with, because we're fortunate, but I think a lot of B2B marketers struggle with that. And I also like your point about the value exchange. I think we all know that first party data is king, but another struggle with B2B marketers in particular is the turnover we're seeing right now and how quickly people are churning out of their jobs. So having a realistic outlook on how quickly your database becomes stale, and it's really fast, and having enrichment and other mechanisms to be able to update your data passively is best. So as people are logging emails and finding things and things are bouncing, if that can feed back into your CRM to help keep things clean, you're just so much better off.
Yeah, excellent point.
So I have a kind of a two-part question here. What do you think is the cause of the churn? Because that's kind of an interesting point. And then also, how do you think identity resolution does improve that first-party data?
So the churn question, like, why does anybody get burned out? I think that's a that's a pretty big question. I think a lot of people have been pushed to an emotional extreme with everything going on in the world. I think we're all under pressure with COVID, losing family members, all of the things that happen. And it's forcing us to really question whether or not the company we're with aligns with our values. So I see a lot of people who have seen the benefits of remote work, proven that they excel at being productive, and their company is still saying you have to be in the office at least 3 to 4 days a week, even if COVID's still going. So I think a lot of different things are going on to contribute to that churn. And now we're seeing some instability in the market. We're not seeing a lot of change in how much revenue people are bringing in, but the tech company evaluations are going down, and it's causing a lot of angst on the part of executives. So we're already starting to see some layoffs as a result of that, and that can be like a knee-jerk reaction to these big changes in the market. So I think we have a lot of different factors that are contributing to the amount of churn we're seeing. In terms of identity resolution, helping with first-party data, so in our system, as we have people hitting our website, provided they're in the US and they accept cookies and first-party cookies, that's important. As they identify themselves later on, we can post-fill all of that information. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the question. I kind of got distracted there. I apologize. I got all stirred up with the why is churn happening across the industry?
Well, no, it's just I was curious about that because I was kind of watching. They were joking about it, and the guy was like, it was like a little skit, and the guy was like, "Hey, goes, so just tell me which 2 days that you want to come to the office." And the guy was like, "Well, which 2 days do you need me to come in the office?" And he goes, "Well, Wednesday we have a great taco bar, and Thursday we have a great social hour." So he's like, "So you don't really need me to come in here?" And the guy was like, "I don't understand why you're asking this." And it's like, okay.
Well, and so many marketers, we supplement our teams with contractors all the time, and they're never in the office. They're remote. And this has been happening for, at least a decades. I guess I'm not as tied to having people in the office as some folks. People are either going to be productive or they're not. So I don't get it.
Yeah.
And I'm an introvert, so that might be part of it.
Right. Yep. I feel the same way.
So for David and Camela, what do you think brands can do to leverage the power of their first-party data? And also, Camela, specifically for you, what do you think the brands can do, especially small brands can do, to make sure that they're respecting their audience's data privacy?
So ways you can benefit and leverage the first-party data, I'll give you a really tangible example. Like I mentioned, we have larger size deals. They last a long time. We deal with a lot of different personas. I was able to use our attribution tool and CaliberMind enrichment and all these pieces together to see when personas were hitting our website. And that completely changed the strategy. And we're going through the process of changing our homepage and some of the core pages, because what we noticed is our language is really well tailored to the operational person. But the people who are hitting our website first are at the CXO VP level. And they're going to have a completely different perspective on data and the technology. So having that, I'm getting goosebumps because having that information is so powerful, because we can go from a VP or CXO coming to our website and saying, this is a bit over my head and I don't think that we're ready for it because it seems too complicated, to that solves the problem I have. I'm going to have somebody on my team continue the research. So there are so many ways you can take that information and turn it into a marketing strategy. And then when it comes to making sure that smaller brands respect the data, it's really up to the marketing leader to own the philosophy on how that data is treated. So I've seen a lot of smaller companies go really gung-ho and come up with a communication strategy where they're hitting people all the time, and it's not necessarily what they signed up for. So investing in a resource, whether that's a contractor or somebody in-house that can come up with some kind of subscription option so they can tell you exactly what they want to hear about, and then put your foot firmly down and say, I only want to communicate to these people on this cadence, and we're not going beyond that, I think that's really critical.
Yeah, I think those are great points. Absolutely.
So guess I'll jump in here. Camela, what is something you think B2C marketing could learn from B2B marketing?
I kind of think of it the other way around. I'm always looking to B2C to try to learn from them because I think B2C has for a very long time understood empathy and solving a problem and trying to identify with the personas they interact with. And I feel that B2B, with a few notable exceptions, we tend to feature spew and talk about our technology. And it's just backwards. So I really try to embrace what I'm seeing in the B2C space. We use a lot of memes, a lot of humor, and then we're also trying to approach this from a value first. How can we solve an adjacent problem and establish ourselves as experts? I just think there's so much to learn from B2C. And you guys are way ahead of us in terms of understanding the data landscape, particularly privacy first, the laws around data. They impact us all equally. I just don't think B2B has responded as much as we should.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, we do, obviously, as a consumer data provider, we work with a lot of companies that are B2C, but we're a B2B company. And the challenge for us and I've always been challenged with, okay, as a B2B, we're not, I feel like we're not able in some ways to do some of the things that are like more humorous, like doing memes and things like that they do in the B2C world. But just as you were saying that, I pictured in my head a meme that was like an identity thing where, there's lots of bots and all those bots represent a person, because like that's one of the things that we're always talking about is data quality and helping people understand that identity isn't always identity. And a lot of times you're linking people to bots and things like that. So now, Jesse, Josh, I think we got to work on we have to work on a meme for us to put out there that is an identity related meme. And I think that we can.
I love that idea.
And we can thank Camela here for
I love the meme. I got you.
I'll be honest, the thing that challenged me is we had somebody do exit interviews for opportunities. And one of the things we were consistently hearing is that one of the salespeople on our team is highly empathetic, really great at asking questions. And that's what stuck with them. So even if they didn't buy, they referred us to somebody else. And it was all that relationship and interpersonal piece. You're rarely going to quit a company because of the technology if they're trying hard. You're going to quit a company if they treat you poorly. And I think that's something that's really important to keep in mind as a B2B company.
All great points. And so the second part of that question was, what do you think B2B can learn from B2C? But you already jumped into that. And I couldn't agree with you more. I say it all the time too. I made a post this week and it came out of this competition I'm in, out of Hype Cycle go-to-market campaign. I was telling you about it before the live, but they had a post. It's like, they call it B2B boredom. It's like their games are the B2B remedy, like B2B boredom remedy. I think it's hilarious because it is a little bit spot on. We are a little boring in B2B sometimes.
And even the graphics we choose, we still show everybody in an office. It's like, how unrelatable is that at the moment? Come on.
I know. The stock images.
Yeah.
Yes. Stock images. Yes.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's true. We need stock images of people working and there's a dog on their lap and they're trying to feed their infant at the same time,
Yeah.
That would be more realistic. Oh my gosh.
So Camela, let me ask you a question. So you have a lot of experience in revenue operations. And so that has a lot to do with aligning different sectors of businesses. So since we're data-oriented podcasts, can you tell us a little bit about how data can play a key role in that process?
Oh my gosh, yes. I was just talking about this with my sales leader today. So we've seen a lot of B2B companies, or I witnessed this cutting my teeth in tech, a lot of sales and marketers working at each other's throats. And a big component of this was a misalignment on goals. So I would see the marketing team getting assigned an MQL goal, and the sales team has pipeline and revenue. And then you start to see the marketing's behavior veer away from what supports the sales goal. So it's just so frustrating to watch. I mean, I've seen marketers pack in a bunch of content syndication and other pieces of information. It's good information. You should use that to nurture too, but they're not ready to talk to sales. So aligning people on the same goals and having them understand how their data can feed into those goals and feed the next step down the funnel, critical.
So should I even ask how you feel about gated content?
No, I'm actually, we ungated the vast majority of our content. Like I said, we have enrichment running on our site. We have 3 key pieces that perform consistently really well that we do gate and feel offer enough value for that exchange. So I think it has its places. I don't think they should be treated on the same par as somebody who's like, hey, I want a demo, you know?
Definitely. That makes sense.
All right, let's go back to when you very first started. And so if you could take one piece of advice out of like all the stuff that you've learned and like give it to yourself when you very first started, what would be that one piece of advice?
You know, I think it's you're never as stuck as you think you are. So I went down a long track in revenue operations. I thought because you were good at something that you had to continue down that path. Exploring other things I was interested in opened up so many doors for me, and I didn't have to backslide on my career path. So, you know, just being open to the possibility of change, I think that's something I would have liked to have known earlier.
And then what are other kind of important lessons that you've learned along the way? Because there's, you know, I mean, you've learned a ton of stuff. There are people that are pivoting into marketing and that would love some life lessons that they, you know, that you've learned along the way.
Let's see. So on the more empathetic woo-woo side, I highly recommend Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. It really changes how you market. So understanding people's emotions and needs and how that drives every decision, whether you're in a B2B office trying to figure out how you're going to solve a problem or if you're at home, I think it can feed a lot into your marketing. So I'm a huge psychology nerd, listen to a ton of podcasts, do a ton of reading. So highly recommend that. And then on a less woo-woo side, get into the data. And if you don't have that as your strong point, it's time to look at that honestly. Is that somebody told me, or somebody told me that I'm not good at data, or am I really not good at data? Because there are stories in data. It's not just numbers. You have to know what leads into it and where it leads to. And that's super powerful as a marketer. So if you're not comfortable with data, really inspect that and see if it's a skill set issue or if it's something you've been told. If it truly is a skill set issue, learn how to partner with people who do have that ability, because they're going to help you so much.
Have you seen that LinkedIn meme? It's like a picture of Legos and it shows like messy data and it's like all the Legos broken up. And then it's like structured data. And then they have like a beautiful house built and it's like, this is the story it can tell.
Yeah, no, I was showing website data to the broader organization today. And I'm like, if you look at any one point, you're missing the context. If you're looking at all of the points, it tells a story, and it's like reading tea leaves a little bit, but there is a story in there.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that was a book, because I was like, man, BDEX is tame. Who's having violent conversations?
Actually, we all are. As we judge ourselves and say we're terrible at something, that's considered violent. It's a really interesting theory.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Do you think that B2B will ever get to the point, like, for example, and I've used this example a lot, Old Navy basically gave their advertising, their marketing to the consumers. They said, hey, make us commercials. And then they used those commercials on like TikTok and Pinterest and Instagram. And so it was very relatable to the consumers because it was the consumers making those commercials. Do you think B2B will ever get kind of close to that to where it is fun?
I think so. And I think we're starting to see signs. So a lot of companies are starting communities. They're learning they can't lead with product first. There's learning how to relate to people as people and seeing them not just as robots. I think that could be worked into your meme. But seeing people as humans and giving them the reins a little bit more, I am seeing more B2B companies who have people generating content on behalf of the brand. And I wouldn't have thought we'd seen that a few years ago. Like, this is new, where people are becoming the mouthpiece of the company. And that's special. So I think we are trending in that direction. It's going to take some time, but I think we're getting there.
I like it, because even if you get on TikTok, some of the advertising on there is still kind of very dry, and they're missing a really good opportunity.
Someone's got some noise there.
That's me. It's called a landscaper. That's part of the problem with not having my own studio. I think I need a studio.
Yeah.
Oh, I just saw the best comment. People are people. Spot on. We're still selling to people. We're not selling to some Borg. Yeah, that's such a great point.
I thought David was getting ready for those violent conversations.
Texas chainsaw
That's
style.
not a chainsaw.
I appreciate Amir so much. He shows up to the Deconstructing Data podcast every week, so it's always fun. I'm surprised we haven't heard his comments about David's ships. So
there was one.
Well, there was one.
Oh, was there really? Did I miss it?
Yeah.
Okay.
If Amir has a TikTok channel, we need to have him doing some BDX dance or something for us.
Oh, totally. Maybe he could come up with a BDX commercial for us. Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's happening right now. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Well, what do you see as the future of the use of data in marketing?
I don't know. I'm thinking to the privacy laws and how things are getting a lot strict. I think that's a knee-jerk reaction to how we abuse data to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear differing opinions on how much people are going to cut back on the data we see. So I think the trend is going to continue that we need to figure out a value proposition, and that's going to continuously change. The bar is going to move, but that value for data exchange, I think, is just going to become more and more important.
Absolutely. What makes you the most excited about the future of data and marketing, and also like what makes you the most nervous about it?
I think the most excited is that we're leveraging it to talk to people instead of leveraging it to, I think we're just starting to learn that empathy and connection are what work, even in B2B. What makes me scared is sometimes the amount of granularity I can get. So if I'm looking at an account, I see a bunch of different people and all of their activities. That could be a good selling point for our product, and it can also scare people. So I do worry that we're kind of hedging on stalking sometimes, but as long as we use the data ethically, I'm hoping that we still get the rights to continue.
Yeah, that's what always scares me is the ethical use. I mean, there have in the past been too many, people, individuals, companies as a whole as well, that have found unethical ways to use data and have made it harder for everybody else that that wants to use it more ethically. And there's always going to be the bad actors out there, unfortunately. So that's always the one thing that makes me nervous. And we as a company have a policy internally that we are very careful at picking our customers. And so a lot of times people come to us with data. They want to sell data on our platform, and we're like, no, you can't sell that here. And then there's other people that want to buy data, and our first question is, how do you intend to use it? Yeah. And so we want to really make sure that we understand that it's going to be used ethically first before we even allow someone to become our customer. But yes, that's not everybody. Not everybody does that, and that's the problem.
It's tough.
Absolutely. So,
Awesome.
what was that?
I said, what else do we got? Was there any other questions we had?
Josh, did you have any more questions?
I did not. I was. I'm working on memes right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I thought that was a really good ending on, ethics. Unless there's anything else to add on that, I mean, data privacy could be a whole other hour-long conversation, but just to kind of close out that conversation, what do you guys think could be done to make sure that we don't have to be so paranoid about data?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think that we will get there. I think it's a process. I think that without giving away too much of some of the internal projects that we're working on at BDEX, ultimately there needs to be a centralized system that helps the consumer understand where their data is going and who has access to it, and sort of almost like a do not call list works, how that's sort of centralized. And I think that, in the long term, we'll eventually get to a point where the consumer has a little more control and transparency and into how their data is being used. And I think when we get there, I think that the sky is the limit to how it can be used then, because the consumer can control it, and if for one reason or another they see something that they're not comfortable with, they can just turn it off. Yeah,
and I think Apple's already moving along those lines with being able to mask their IP address and opt into. We're just seeing so many extremes lately. I think you're right. It will shake out. We're seeing the same with data and marketing. We went from, because we're going digital, everything's trackable, to realizing that's not the reality. A lot of that is due to this first party, the issues we're talking about right now. So I think we're going to go from, no, you should just use your gut, to somewhere in the middle, hopefully soon. But yeah, it's been kind of wild the last few years on a lot of fronts.
Definitely.
Yep.
And probably get more wild since it's an election year. So let's hope that things don't get too wild. But in closing, we would love to get input from listeners about what or who you would like to hear on BDEX's new podcast. What questions do you have, aka Amir, that we should answer in our upcoming series that focuses on data trends and advertising and marketing around identity, machine learning, data privacy, and the future of data and marketing? So please send us any and all feedback to info@bdex.com. Share your qualitative data with us so we can make this a better show for you. But with all that being said, Camela, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you.
And have fun with your memes.
It was so nice to meet you today.
We'll try. We'll do our best to keep B2B less boring, more funny. Thanks, Camela.
Bye-bye.